Welcome to this weekly English news bulletin on Ronahi. In an interview with the Turkish daily Watan, Jamil Bayek, the Executive Council co-president of the Kurdistan Communities Union, has said that the realization of the Kurdish National Congress depends on the resolution of the Rojava problems, pointing out that powers who are trying to defeat the Rojava revolution should respect the resistance and the will of the people of Rojava. The Executive Council co-president Jamil Bayek spoke to the Turkish Watan Daily about the resolution process, Kurdish National Congress and Rojava. Asked about the possibility of the Kurdish guerrillas restarting a process of withdrawal from northern Kurdistan, Bayek said, "This depends on the developments in the process." Bayek went on saying, "The Turkish state should not play games with our leader movement and people, nor give a negative answer to our efforts for a solution." Bayek said that the resolution process can make no headway with one-sided steps of Kurds. Bayek also criticized the government for failing to create a public opinion for a democratic and peaceful solution to the Kurdish question. The Turkish government also failed to pay regard to Wise People's Commission reports that revealed the public demand for a permanent solution and to improve the conditions of the Kurdish leader Öcalan so he can prepare the grounds for a solution. Jamil Bayek went on asking, "Now that the public also wants a solution, who is that who doesn't want? Is it the AKP government and Erdogan himself? Who is preventing the achievement of a solution? Of course, there are also some international powers that do not want the Kurdish question to be solved, which goes contrary to their interest," Bayek underlined. Also commenting on the Kurdish National Congress, Bayek said, "The realization of the Congress currently depends on the resolution of the problems in Rojava," pointing out that the Congress cannot take place amid attempts to defeat the Rojava revolution and agreements among a number of powers. They should respect the Rojava revolution and the resistance and the will revealed there instead of splitting the region. Those attending the Geneva II, imposing embargo and being involved in the attacks against Rojava cannot organize a national congress which is aimed at ending the problems among Kurds. The Kurdistan Communities Union Executive Council co-president Bayek stressed that the Kurdistan Democratic Party policies were coordinated with Ankara and regional policies, adding that KDP's policies were shaped by its economic interest and economic agreements that worth billions. Following the announcement of the Democratic Self-Rule Administration of Jizir Canton, the first steps will be taken to establish a new democratic education system. The Rojava education system, which since 1967 have been under close government supervision and reflected as a result the official Ba'ath regime ideology. Since 1967, all Syrian schools, colleges and universities have been under close government supervision. The Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education are primarily responsible for all aspects of administration, including curricular development. In the mid-1980s, Syrian education policies reflected the official intention of the Ba'ath Party to use the schools to indoctrinate the masses with its ideology and to make school training responsive to the nation's manpower needs. The ongoing Syrian crisis for 3 years has taken a serious toll on school infrastructure, limiting educational opportunities for children across the country. According to UNICEF, over 4,000 schools, 1 out of 5, are damaged or destroyed, or they are being used to shelter displaced families. On contrary, the people of Rojava saved their areas and their education institutions from destruction. The people of Rojava feel the vacuum left by the Syrian regime and started to organize themselves in all areas, including education. In this regard, the Teachers' Union and the Kurdish Language Association were established. After the announcement of the Jizir Canton on 21st of January, the first steps have been taken to establish new education system which will be based on democracy. Mohammed Saleh Abdo, the president of the Education and Training Commission of the Democratic Self-Rule Administration of Jizir Canton, said that they will form a new program for a democratic education system in Rojava in order to eliminate the Ba'ath ideology, which was based on a nationalist and chauvinist ideology. Salah Gadot, the president of the Jazir Canton's Diplomatic Commission, has announced the beginning of major efforts to open diplomatic channels between the Rojava self-rule administrations and other powers in the region. Gadot added that in the coming days they will hold a meeting with southern Kurdistan regional government officials, which will be followed by official visits to Iran, Iraq and Turkey. Salah Gadot, whose responsibilities as president of Jazir Canton's Diplomatic Commission include international relations, said they are aiming to create new conditions and regional relations together with a new political perspective. Toward this aim, diplomacy will start to develop a foundation for a constructive dialogue. Gadot added that diplomatic letters had been sent to many European and neighboring countries as well. On the subject of Geneva too, Gadot stated that there was no Kurdish representation at the peace conference. Gadot recalled that the conference organizing committee had not invited Kurds to participate as an independent party, saying, "How can someone within the Syrian National Coalition declare themselves as the representatives of the Kurds in the name of the Kurdish National Coalition? The Syrian coalition has not accepted the existence of the Kurds. For that reason, it's not correct to say that those in the committees are representing Kurds. We are saying that Kurds do not have representatives at Geneva too." Gadot went on to state that Geneva too had not taken any step forward for the benefit of the Syrian people, asking, "How can a meeting in which there are no representatives of the Syrian people bring an end to this violence and build a lasting solution?" In this regard, PYD's co-chair Salah Muslim spoke earlier on Ronahi about exclusion of Kurds as a separate delegation from the Geneva peace talks.
We think the starting of Geneva negotiations as happened is not really because we were expecting to be collapsed, not to have any results. And that's happened after the first round. And if they don't change the second round, the third round, maybe we'll have Geneva 2, Geneva 3, Geneva 4, and Geneva 10 without any results. So they have to change their mind to look for the actual powers, what they are on the ground, and they have to join these discussions. They have to be in Geneva too. So if you just exclude the Kurds, it means you cannot solve it, because we think that the Kurdish issue in Syria is the mother of all problems of Syria. It was feeding the dictatorship, the Ba'athist regime. They were just saying, the Kurds are dangerous for the unity and dangerous for Syria, so they kept us away, they excluded us, and then what happened, everybody is seeing. So we don't regime excluding the Kurds again. They should accept the Kurdish being, recognize their being constitutionally. That's what the Kurds are looking for. Constitutional recognition of their being and constitutional guarantees for their democratic rights.
The Assyrian Unity Party and the Assyrian Women's Union supported the self-rule administration of the three cantons of Rojava and described it as a historical steps and models to solve the Syrian crisis. The Assyrian Unity Party and Assyrian Women's Union have greeted the democratic self-rule administrations of the three cantons of Rojava, Jazir, Kobani and Afrin and pledged their support. In its message, the Assyrian Unity Party said, "We consider these declarations to be historic steps and see them as part of the struggle for freedom. They have strengthened the communities in this region." The Assyrian Unity Party added, "These steps towards self-rule administrations are very important for the unity and reconstruction of Syria. These self-rule administrations are the only path to resolve the problems in Syria." On its part, the Assyrian Women's Union said in a message sent to the three cantons administrations, "We offer our congratulations as the Assyrian Women's Union to the declaration of the democratic administrations in Rojava. These are historic steps as regards the safeguarding of the equality and shared life of communities." The Assyrian Women's Union message continued The position and participation of women in these canton administrations indicates their democratic intentions. We, as Assyrian women, support these self-rule administrations and will take our places alongside Kurdish and Arabic women in the struggle for women's freedom. We once again salute these historic steps. The London-based organization Nations Without States issued a statement in support of the Rojava revolution, acknowledging the existence of Rojava and the self-rule administrations announced in the three cantons of Rojava, Jizir, Kobani and Afrin. The statement issued by the organization Nations Without States said the following: the pressure group Nations Without States was formed with the express purpose of promoting the concept of national self-determination. The Kurdish communities of Syria have decided that their best and safest future within the country can best be protected and nurtured by the creation of an autonomous region that they call Rojava. This region is not under the control of the Assad regime in Damascus or militant groups, but the local people themselves. The brutal treatment meted out by the regime over many years and the more recent and similar treatment by Islamist fighters should convince observers that only their autonomy can guarantee their freedom and safety. It is not a coincidence that the area is the most stable and peaceful within Syria. Whilst we believe their choice is the right one, it is also theirs and not the right of others to decide their future. The statement of the Nations Without States went on to say, the blocking of the independent Kurdish representation at the recent peace negotiations in Geneva is both a atrocity and tragedy. Whilst we cannot influence the warring factions within the country to accept the Kurds as independent people, we are disappointed that the international community failed to do so. We urge them to think again and acknowledge the existence of and interact with Rojava. Long live the Kurdish people and Kurdistan, Nations Without States. To discuss the self-rule administrations of the three cantons of Rojava, joining us now live from Norway, Erling Folkford, a former Norwegian Red Party Parliament member. Mr. Folkford, thank you for being with us. The people of Rojava have taken historical steps toward ruling themselves and declared their administrations in the three cantons of Rojava. What is your evaluation of this development, taking into consideration the decades of oppression Kurds in Rojava have been exposed to?
I made my first visit to Rojava in 1995 and 1998, when I also met Abdullah Öcalan. I talked with many of the Kurds who were born in Syria and had lived there their whole life in the country. But they had not even the right to Syrian citizenship. Each one of them had a red ID card instead of passports. Parents were not allowed to give their children Kurdish names. The Kurdish language were banned in the schools. But I did also meet strong Kurds who organized people in the villages and the cities. People were invited to ideological studies and to learn about the Kurdish history. I was deeply impressed when I visited one of the PKK education centers. Young people there said they would fight for the rights and the freedom of their own people. They said they wanted to change Kurdistan and create a new Kurdistan with equal democratic rights for everyone, and not only for the Kurds. When I and 3 other members of the Red Party in Norway visited Rojava in March last year, everything was changed. We talked with women and men who were co-chairs in the councils in Kamishli and Serikanya, as well as with the women and men in the streets. And I myself was really happy when I, outside the shop in Serikanya, met a former guerrilla fighter who I had talked with in the education center 15 years ago. The people of Rojava seems today to be more united than ever before. They have taken long historical steps forward towards the democratic self-rule system.
Mr. Folkford, the officials in the three cantons of Rojava declared that they will approach regional and international countries in order to establish relations. To what extent will the administrations be accepted in the region and worldwide, in your opinion?
To me, it seems that both the US, the United States, and the European Union want to isolate the new regime in Rojava. It seems to me that the American president, as well as the leaders of the European Union, are afraid of a real democratic system in Rojava, as well as in the neighboring countries. They, as well as the Turkish government, seem to prefer war instead of supporting a movement to want to change Syria with peaceful means. I hope they will change their minds, but I think it will take a long time.
What about Norway? Will Norway recognize these administrations of Rojava?
I will, after our visit last year, the Office of Foreign Affairs in Rojava sent a letter to the Prime Minister in Norway. They asked for humanitarian aid. Our Prime Minister didn't even send an answer. Later, our group had a meeting with the Norwegian Foreign Office. They listened, but they were not interested in building good relations with Rojava.
In general, how is Norway dealing with the Kurdish issue in the four parts of Kurdistan, Mr. Folkford?
The Norwegian government has for decades been a very close ally to the United States of America. But you should remember that Norwegian soldiers are fighting for American interests in Afghanistan. Norway is one of the countries who bombed and destroyed Libya. But some politicians in Norway really want a change. In Parliament, some MPs organized a Kurdish group in the 90s. This group still has some activities. Norwegian politicians on the lower level have visited officials in South Kurdistan, and some of the MPs had talks with BDP leaders and other politicians from both South and North Kurdistan when they visit Norway. But unfortunately, all these activities are today informal and not on behalf of the Norwegian government. I hope this will change in the future.
As you know, Mr. Folkford, the Kurdish issue in the four parts of Kurdistan are connected to each other. The people of Rojava are monitoring the resolution process going on in Turkey and hoping that the Kurdish issue will be solved there, which will mean that the Turkish acceptance of Kurds in Rojava. Should the Kurds find hope on this resolution process going on in Turkey?
There is a hope. But I believe that Prime Minister Erdogan, first of all, is working to obtain as many votes as possible to the AKP, both in the local elections and in March and in the parliamentary election next year. But he has serious problems. After the message of peace and reconciliation from Mr. Öcalan and the Peace and Democracy Party last Meadows, a new strong process has started. I believe both people and some of the MPs of Turkey want this process to continue. But I also think that a large part of the AKP leadership, they do not want a peaceful solution.
You have written a book entitled Kurdistan. Tell us more about your book. When was it published and what is it all about?
I am a very experienced Norwegian photographer, traveled a lot in all parts of Kurdistan in the last period of the 90s. We published this book 11 years ago. Without her pictures, I think this book had been nothing. The title is Kurdistan, the Past, the People and the Future. I have tried to make a brief description of Kurdish culture from the beginning, thousands of years ago. It's also a description of the Kurdish struggle in the last century in the four parts of Kurdistan. Kurdish friends in Norway gave me a lot of help. I hope the book one day will be translated and published in Kurdistan. If that happens, I will write a new chapter about the recent, what has happened recently in Rojava.
At the end, you as a Western politician, Mr. Folkford, and supporter of the Kurdish people, do you have any plans to support the people of Rojava in this historical process?
I think true information about the new self-rule system in Rojava is the most important I and my friends in the Red Party in Norway can do. We want to inform people and little by little build up a pressure against the Norwegian government. In a NATO country like Norway, this will be a long struggle, but we will not give up. We will also cooperate with Kurds from Rojava living in Norway in order to build up friendship between peoples in Rojava and in Norway.
Mr. Erling Folkford, a former Norwegian Red Party Parliament member, you've been with us from Norway. Thank you very much for speaking to Ronahi. The people of northern Kurdistan are continuing their support for Rojava Revolution. In Adana and Jolemerk, the Rojava Revolution has been saluted, and PYD's co-chair Asya Abdullah attended on Tuesday Peace and Democracy Party's group meeting at the Turkish Parliament. More in the next report.
The Democratic Union Party co-chair Asya Abdullah and her delegation attended on Tuesday the Peace and Democracy Party's group meeting at the Turkish Parliament in Ankara. PYD leader was welcomed with applause by the MPs upon her arrival at the hall before the group meeting started. Later, Abdullah and Peace and Democracy Party BDP co-chair Salahuddin Demirtas took their seats. BDP's group meeting focused on Rojava Revolution and congratulated the self-rule administrations announced in the three cantons of Rojava. In the election campaign in the city of Jolemer, Peace and Democracy Party co-chair Salahuddin Demirtas spoke to a large crowd about Rojava Revolution. Demirtas connected the struggle in Rojava to the struggle of the Kurds in northern Kurdistan and saluted the resistance of the people in Rojava. Demirtas added, "In front of the eyes of the world, the people of Kurdistan are writing the history of Kurdistan themselves. Today, when we look to Rojava, to Afrin, Kobani, Jizir and Qamishlo, we see the results of the resistance of the youth in Gavar and Jolemerk. For that reason, let's send out from here in Jolemerk thousands of greetings to Qamishlo, that castle of resistance." The people in Adana, Turkey, also saluted the Rojava Revolution and the self-rule administrations in a festivity in Darlioglu neighborhood organized by Peace and Democracy Party. The Peace and Democracy Provincial Chair said in a speech that Rojava Revolution is the revolution of women.
Eva-Lena Jansson, a Swedish MP, has raised questions in the Swedish Parliament about the role Turkey may have played in the kidnapping of Syrian metropolitans. Jansson's remarks in the Parliament follow the publication of an article by Syrian journalist in which he reports with documentation the Turkish involvement in the kidnappings.
The two metropolitans, Mar Gregorius Johanna Brahim and Paulos Yazci, were abducted by an unknown group, and little information about them has been released since their abduction. Eva-Lena Jansson, a parliament member from the Swedish Social Democratic Party, brought attention to the two men now missing for 9 months and reminded her colleagues of EU spokeswoman Catherine Ashton's demand that the two men should be released. Jansson's remark followed the publication of an article by Syrian journalist Tikran Eko in the Swedish journal Huwaida. In the article, Eko reports with documentation that a man involved in the kidnapping was later arrested by Turkish police and continues to be in custody. Eko goes on to the claim that the kidnappings bear the fingerprint of the Turkish state. Jansson went on to raise the question why Turkey has made no official statement on the investigation and its relationship to the kidnappings. She said that she would ask the Swedish Foreign Minister Carl Bildt to take up the issue with other EU ministers. The Syrian journalist Tikran Eko published the article after speaking with Ekrem Metin, a journalist who investigated the incident in its immediate aftermath. Metin stated that the two men were first kidnapped by a group of around 70 men affiliated to the Islamic State of Iraq and the Sham and under the command of a man called Abu Banat.
Young Kurds from southern Kurdistan who are joining the ranks of militant groups in Syria are becoming a danger for the Kurdish region. According to a Kurdish official in southern Kurdistan, the danger is that they will be used as cells to mount attacks on targets in southern Kurdistan.
Around 200 young Kurds from southern Kurdistan went to wage holy war in Syria and are joining the ranks of militant groups in a conflict that has become a clarion call for homegrown jihadists across the world. According to Reuters news agency, the trend is alarming for southern Kurdistan. Definitely it's a big concern, said a senior official with knowledge of security issues in the Kurdish capital Erbil, who spoke on condition of anonymity. The danger is that they will be used as cells to mount attacks on targets here. The autonomous region's proximity to Syria makes it especially vulnerable. And whilst Kurdistan is used to dealing with external threats, not least along its tightly controlled border with majority Arab Iraq, this one is posed from within. The region suffered its first major bombing in 6 years last September, which was claimed by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Sham, a Sunni group also active in Syria. Publicly, officials in Kurdistan play down the threat and insist that the region will remain safe. But all companies operating in the region are taking extra precautions.
According to Reuters report, many of the Kurds fighting in Syria are from Halabja city, which was once a haven for Sunni militants who formed a group in 2001 named Ansarul Islam.
Many of the young Kurds who have gone to Syria come from Halabja. Halabja lies near the mountainous border area between Iraq and Iran, which was once a haven for Sunni militants who formed a group there in 2001 that came to be called Ansarul Islam. Ansarul Islam banned music and forced men to grow their beards in the enclave named Little Tora Bora after the Taliban stronghold in Afghanistan, where Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden once sheltered. One of the first targets of the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003 was Ansarul Islam. Surviving members of Ansarul Islam retreated into Iran, but continued to carry out attacks, including a twin suicide bombing against Kurdistan's ruling parties in 2004, that left more than 100 people dead. It's not clear whether the young men go to Syria on their own initiative or have been recruited and sent there. Mainstream Islamist parties deny involvement, and a committee has been set up by the government to investigate the matter. A spokesman for the Ministry of Endowments and Religious Affairs said preachers at the region's more than 5,000 mosques who are on the government payroll were forbidden to incite violence and would be punished if found doing so. There is no evidence that any imam has incited people, directly or indirectly, to go to Syria, Marwan Naqshbandi said. Kurdish security services, however, raided 11 mosques one night last December in the city of Slemaniye, on suspicion they were being used as recruitment centers, seizing identity papers and laptops. Although Kurdistan shares a border with Syria, most of the young men travel there through Turkey, some via Lebanon and other southern Iraq. Around 40 have come back to Kurdistan and are now either behind bars because they are considered a threat to the national security or are under close surveillance.
The American Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, has drawn attention to the situation of Christians in Syria and Rojava and said in a report that the Islamic militants are driving hundreds of thousands of Syrian Christians from their homes. But there is one group on the inside, the country's Kurdish population, who are friendly to both American and Syrian Christians, and they are offering hope.
More and more Muslim rebels are attacking Syria's Christians. Last September, they assaulted the ancient Christian city of Malula. Islamist fighters with the al-Nusra group rampaged through Malula, killing several Catholics in the process. The ongoing targeting of Syria's Christian community has threatened its very existence. Thousands have fled. Not all Christians can leave the country or take up arms to protect themselves. Who will protect them? There is one group willing to risk their lives to protect Syria's Christians, the country's Kurdish population. Tina Ramirez heads up a non-profit religious freedom organization called Hardwired.
My experience of the Kurds in Syria was positive, and for a long time they were defending Christians that were being persecuted there.
Last year, the Kurds declared autonomy over the northeastern part of their country. It's known as Syria Kurdistan. Because the Kurds control that territory, the Christians living in cities like Qamishli are better protected. The Kurdish militias have won many battles against jihadis bent on controlling the region. Bilal is a former soldier, now a refugee camp leader in northern Iraq.
Resist Arabization, to not be controlled by Arabs, to defend our regions. We fought Al-Qaeda for the past 13-14 years with success. We have killed many Islamists and their leaders in Syria Kurdistan.
Eventually, the Syrian war will come to an end. And like Iraq, the country may end up divided into zones of influence, including a permanent, autonomous Syrian Kurdistan. A balkanization of the country.
It is a balkanization of the country. I don't think it'll be a de jure legal separation with different countries being set up, but the zones are there, just as in Iraq.
Should the U.S. provide more support for the Syrian Kurds?
I hope that our intelligence services are in touch with them, and I think we should be willing to help those groups.
Who stood with America in the Iraq War? If America wants to apply democracy in the Middle East, if America is looking for long-term relationship in the Middle East, if America is looking for nations that will stand with them, it is the Kurds.
A secular Muslim force in the Middle East, one that opposes Islamic extremism, is friendly to Americans, and is tolerant of Christians. Gary Lane, CBN News, Erbil, Iraq.
Let's move on now to the following news from Qamishlo, Derbesi and Kobani cities of Rojava.
A delegation from the Assyrian Democratic Organization visited the Democratic Society Movement office in Qamishlo city. The sides discussed the declaration of the democratic self-rule administrations of Rojava cantons and the kidnapping of the politician Gabriel Moshe from the Assyrian organization by the Syrian regime. Moreover, discussions at the meeting focused on ways to consolidate the cooperation between the two parties in order to strengthen the relations between the two components of Rojava. The Academy of Martyr Chabad graduated in the village of Dar al-Arab of Derbesi city, a group of 30 fighters from the Kurdish and Arabic origins. The fighter received during a month of training lessons in military, ideology, women's history, history of Kurdistan, and lessons in the democratic self-rule administrations. The relief committees are continuing in Kobani Canton to distribute various aid to internally displaced people from the cities of Jarablus and Minbij who fled the clashes between different armed groups. The relief committees distributed relief aid to 150 displaced persons in the villages of West Kobani. The Kurdish Red Crescent distributed medicines to the citizens of Qamishlo city. The medicines were distributed under the prescriptions in the Red Crescent Center of Corniche neighborhood. The distributed medicines were sent by the citizens of Sleimaniye city of southern Kurdistan. The shipment of 4 tons included an amount of blood bags, first aid medicines, and some medical devices.
The English Independent published an article on the Kurdish issue and said that Kurds share a common desire to be able to express their ethnic identity and to govern themselves, while Vice magazine published an article on the Syrian Christians and said Syria's Christian minority are fighting back. More in the press review.
The English Independent has published an article on the Kurdish issue and entitled the article with "We have been here longer than 1,000 years, Kurdistan's fight for nationhood." The Independent said in the article, Kurds are the world's largest stateless minority. And although they are divided by nationality, dialect, custom, allegiances and religion, they share a common desire to be able to express their ethnic identity and to govern themselves in the areas in which they live. Their struggle has truly been long and bloody, but today, while instability reigns throughout the Middle East, their prospects look brighter than they had done in a long time. The International Vice magazine published an article of the Hungarian journalist Balin Slienko on the Syrian Christians and said, Syria's Christian minority are fighting back. The Kurds have made a point of not tolerating rivaled armed groups on their territory, a key to the region's stability, but they don't seem to mind that some of the Christians are forming militias. All the communities are equal here, so these guys have the right to protect their areas, said Shahin Yaqub, Kurdish police spokesman in Al-Malkiya. Al-Monitor website said, Syrian Kurds courting Turkmens. We are ready to protect Turkmens and form an alliance with them against Al-Qaeda. This unexpected offer came from Saleh Muslim, the co-chairman of the Democratic Union Party PYD, which is steadily increasing its influence in Syria and is commonly referred to as the Syrian franchise of the Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK. In an interview with Al-Monitor via Skype, Muslim voiced concerns about the attacks on Turkmens by the Islamic State of Iraq and Asham. All the people in Syria are our brothers. Our doors are wide open for Turkmens. We are waiting for them to contact us, Muslim said. Al-Monitor also spoke on Brussels with Ramzi Kartal, president of Kurdistan People's Congress, whose name was mentioned as the forced assassination target in the newly leaked sound recording of the main suspect Umar Gunay, who allegedly assassinated the 3 Kurdish activists last year. It shows the way the Kurdish movement analyzes the government is very correct, Kartal said in an exclusive statement to Al-Monitor.
That's all for this week. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.